everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsSaysStamp.com with a card inspiration using some Ranger products that I've had fun experimenting with. To get started, I am going to be using the really small Gelli Plate, and this is a 3x5. Really love this size. It's perfect for card making. I have my brayer here. I also have some of the Tim Holtz layering stencils, and I've picked out a few that have really fine detail. I also have some scrap paper to clean my brayer off, and I've cut up some pieces of gift tissue paper. This is an experiment. We'll see how it works out, but I thought it would be fun to go ahead and try to do some Gelli Plate prints using the tissue paper. The paints I'll be using are all going to be the Dina Wakley paints, and I really like these with the Gelli Plate because they're really solid or fluid but yet solid, I guess. I don't know how to explain that, but they stay wet for a nice long time, so you really do get some good prints. So for this one, I've put my paint down over the stencil, and here I'm just spraying it over. You can see how it's kind of blobby in the middle. I'm not looking for perfection, but once I peel this off, you can see that I have a really nice pattern, and I'll go ahead and roll my brayer off onto that scrap paper. And now I'll go ahead and pick up a piece of the tissue paper. I'm really kind of having fun playing with tissue paper lately, so bear with me. But I'll go ahead and lay the tissue paper down, and I'm just going to go ahead and press this down really well. And like I said, I really like this size because it's perfect for card making and the panel that I'll be putting onto my card. So once I have that pressed down, I'll go ahead and peel my paper off, and I get a really cool print. I have sped up my video so I can fit it into the time allowed, but this next color I'm using is the Dina Wakley Tangerine, and I've done a positive print and then I've removed my stencil, and now I'm going to go ahead and get a negative print. So I'm going to firmly press that paper down in and rub it down in and try to get most of the ink out of there, and then I'll lift that up, and now I have an opposite print. The next color I'm using is the Umber, and this one is really nice and light actually once you go and brayer it all over. So if you notice, I'm brayering this onto the Gelli Plate without the stencil, as I did the Tangerine just a second ago. So as you can see, that's really nice and light, and I'm going to be using this one, and it reminds me of trees in a way. So next I'll go ahead and put my tissue paper down and press that in. And I like using the tissue paper also because I can press that paper right on into the stencil. So once I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and peel that off. I get a nice print, and I'll peel the stencil off and lay another piece of tissue down and press this down in, and I'll get the opposite print. So the next paint I'll be using is the white, and again I'm going to just go ahead and brayer this under the Gelli Plate. Now for each of these tissue prints I'm doing just one single color. My theory is that I'm going to use Tim Holtz sprays in a little bit, and where the paint is it will resist the sprays. So again I'm just pressing my paper down in, using my finger this time to get into those little areas of those little tiny dots. And again, that tissue paper just works right into that stencil really well. So here's some little dots. I'll be able to get several prints off this white, as I'm going to just go ahead and lay down another piece of paper and still try to pick up some of that paint. I could see when I lifted up my other one that I still had paint left over. So I'll go ahead and get as many as I can from the white, and again I'll lift that stencil off, and now I can get another print. White will be my final color or my final layer on my card panel, so once I get going you'll see what I'm talking about. So here I'm just pressing this in, making sure that I can get most of that paint off, and I have just a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and press in another sheet for my final print. Okay, now it's time to add some color. I have my print and my peeled paint spray, and this is the experimental part. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and with the paint side down, I'm going to go ahead and just dip this right into that stain or that spray. And now I'll use my heat tool to dry it off. The next color I'm using is the Rusty Hinge, and I'll be using this with the turquoise because it's contrasting color and it'll really pop and contrast against each other. So again, I'll use my heat tool to dry this off. And my final color is Peacock Feathers, and I've used that with the Tangerine. Okay, now it's time to collage everything together. I have my gel medium and I'm using some Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock because it's really nice and heavy. And I'll start tearing my tissue paper pieces and start collaging them together. This gives me great control. I can decide where I want my color to go, and I just have spots of color here and there. And I'm not worrying much about how I'm layering everything. I just want to make sure that my patterns line up vertically or horizontally. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay the three types of color down, and I'm going to continue collaging until I have my whole panel complete. I have most of my color pieces laid down. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into that umber colored. It reminds me kind of trees down in the bottom, and I'll just tear out a few pieces and start filling in here and there. If you happen to get any of the stains or the sprays onto your paintbrush with the gel medium, I suggest using a paper towel to clean your brush off in between some of those layers so you don't get unwanted color in your collage. Okay, so my last layer, like I said, will be the white, and these are just the little white dots, and you can see how the tissue paper is kind of muting out some of the other color, and so I'm using smaller pieces of tissue, and it's kind of all wet with gel medium. I'm just tearing up little pieces and just kind of placing them here and there. At this point, once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry completely, and then I'll be trimming up my panel. I have mounted my trimmed panel onto a piece of Nina White cardstock and then mounted that onto a fog card. I've also cut out a leaf from the Tattered Leaves, and I've added my Autumn Thanks, and I've used the Chit Chat stickers from Tim Holtz. And I've also created a little bow using the paper twine. And next I'm just going to use my glossy accents, and I'll be putting that stem down, and then I'll add a dot of glossy accents to put my bow in place. This is a look at my finished card. I thought of doing a colored leaf, but I really like the stark white on top of my background. I hope I've given you some inspiration on how to use some of your Ranger products with the Gelli Plate. Thanks for watching.